are your wages rising faster than the cost of goods? And for much of Joe Biden's tenure in office, that was not the case. That's why when you went to the grocery store, you had far less money than you did before. It's not just that prices rose, it's that your wages did not keep pace as a whole with the cost of goods. That is now flipped. In the President Trump economy, wage growth around 4%, which is very good. The cost of goods growing at about 2.4%, which is low. So that means that every single month you are netting out, on average, everybody's financial circumstances are not the exact same, but more money in your pocket for the goods you are purchasing. Inflation conquered, and we should be having. And now there is increasing motivation for this. The Fed lowering interest rates, which would be very transformative in a positive way for overall economic circumstances, whether it's for mortgages, whether it's for car loans, whether it is for credit card interest debt, all of those different things, the borrowing cost would become cheaper. That is the direction we are going. Early this morning, Trump announced also that the China and the United States trade deal has effectively been reached and that we are going to have consistent 50% tariffs in place. China will have a 10% tariff on our goods, and that is another positive story.
They're going to give a little more rare earth minerals to us in the bargain as well, or more openness to that, which is certainly a good thing. So we need some of that. But progress, Clay, on this, which we had been told all along, oh my gosh, Trump is going to run the global economy into a ditch. That's the opposite of what is happening.
Yes.
So, not a surprise to us.
We are approaching all-time record highs in the stock market. Those record highs set in February, and so they are probably going to be challenged in the near future. We are very close, which means basically, as we told you, even if you bought stocks for the first time in your life in February, that is, you had never purchased stocks before in the history of your life. You had never had a retirement account, no 401k, no stock ownership. Even, Buck, if you bought at the absolute apex, you could not have bought at a worse time. You bought on the day and the hour that the all-time S&P 500 height of all time was hit. You have lost about 1%. So if you just didn't pay attention at all to stock market prices, and you bought on the worst day the all-time high was set, you have lost about 1% on paper.
Yeah, that's going to be very few people. Most of all of us, the market, the way it most immediately affects you has to do with your 401k, your IRA, your retirement accounts. So you're probably invested in the market in those accounts if you're in mutual funds for a long period of time. And if you've just let the money sit, it's doing what it's supposed to do. Getting rich slowly or being wealthy slowly is the only sure way to do it, and investing in and believing in the U.S. economy. There are other ways. I know there are quick ways, but I'm just saying if you're looking for a strategy, you want to do it slow and steady. That wins the race. Clay, there's also, I think, just victory in the air so far on the protests, which is a major win for the administrations. You got the good economic data, the China trade movement, let's say. It's not not a done deal, but there's certainly discussions. I think he had a 90-minute phone call with Xi Jinping a few days back. So Trump is very much and isn't it amazing? He's doing the phone call.
Yeah.
We just had an administration. We just had a president of the United States who had people around him having to do everything for him and make sure that he had enough applesauce and nap time throughout the day. Now we have a president who is going up against the most powerful premier in the world, who is not the president of the United States, so number two, and doing, I think, a very good job of it. There's supposed to be some protests elsewhere. We're watching this pretty closely. Texas Governor Abbott, for example, saying, Clay, exactly what should be said. Same thing with Governor DeSantis in Florida, I might add. Protest all you want. Protest is great. You want to say that this is horrible, that they're enforcing the law against illegals? Subtext, you're nuts, but okay, fine. You're allowed to say that. You start hurting people or breaking property or breaking laws, can't block roadways, you're going to get arrested, you're going to be held responsible. Just think about what a difference it is, a vibe shift, as the kids say, from 2020 with BLM riots to now, National Guard deployed. We'll get into some of what Gavin Newsom is saying. He clearly is positioning himself as the leader of the nationwide Democrat resistance to Trump. I think he is, from Ghostbusters, if we were choosing the form of the destructor, I think Gavin Newsom as the leader of the Democrats is to our benefit, actually. I don't think that he is going to be able to be as effective on this as he certainly thinks he will be. But the fact that they're able to largely, so far, could break out and get crazy tomorrow, but largely meet and contain this anarchy on the streets of L.A. is really encouraging.
Yeah, and I think it, as we said yesterday, is a lesson that Trump learned in the first term. Now, that doesn't mean that there may not be some chaos in blue states and blue cities, but to your point, I don't think anyone who runs a red state, big red states, Florida with DeSantis, Texas with Abbott, I don't think they're going, Brian Kemp in Georgia, Bill Lee in Tennessee, decent population red states that might have blue cities of a decent population inside of them. I don't think they're going to allow this to get out of control. Now, could this get out of control in some blue cities in blue states? Do I think that Tim Walz is going to stop people from rioting in Minneapolis? Sadly, no. And I bet a lot of you who are listening to us in Minneapolis understand. Chicago, I don't have a lot of faith in Pritzker or Brandon Johnson.
The overall feeling around this, though, the zeitgeist, the sense of the national emotions on the illegal immigration issue is very different as a percentage, I think, than what it was during the BLM riots. COVID, it was just this crazy time, and people felt. I think there was just like a mass anxiety disorder that a lot of people were suffering through at that time. And so they were very susceptible to emotional manipulation. That's my belief. I think we saw that play out. And that's not the hardcore left. I just mean a lot of people all of a sudden. I even knew some conservatives. Look, there were some Republicans who were like, we need to do police reform. It's like, this does not mean we have to do police reform.
Yes.
Different now, though, Clay, because 10 plus million illegals come in under Biden. The exploitation of the kindness and decency of the American people, very clear for all to see. The lawlessness, the destruction of sovereignty, and those numbers, we talked about this yesterday, that you have legal immigrants moving 40 points toward get these illegals out of here. It is very hard for them to run the usual playbook of this is racist, this is xenophobic. I mean, you have Black Americans, Latino Americans, any American, basically, at this point, any group, is saying we actually need to have a secure border. A majority of that group is saying we need to have a secure border. And so when it's all Americans by majority saying what the administration's doing is good, this is why this resistance movement is crumbling. We knew this would be it, by the way. The deportations, we said this from the very beginning of Trump's victory. This would be how they try to consolidate. They don't have it yet. But they may get some incident somewhere. They're looking, they want some grandma who seems kindly and elderly to, have an incident where she falls and hits her head during an ICE raid, and then all of a sudden the protest will take on some different emotional dimension.
I think they are struggling because the overwhelming majority of Americans are on the side of the deportation. And I think they're also struggling because they whiffed in the early days of characterizing this by focusing on guys like Abreu Garcia, who are clearly bad dudes, and making them the Maryland man, the Maryland father, who actually, according to indictment in my home state of Tennessee, was a human trafficker. It gets harder to make a case when you pick the wrong people to represent the case that you're going to.
This is really important, what you're hitting on, and it is the Democrats. The one thing that even under the Obama years, and even at least verbally and openly during the Biden years, when it came to border enforcement, it was always, we can agree that violent criminals should be sent out of the country. Now, they didn't actually agree in terms of what they did, but they would say that. Now they're in a position where it's very clear to anyone paying attention, you guys, meaning the Democrats, the party overall, you don't believe that. You actually want them all to stay. You want everyone to stay, including people who are preying on their fellow human beings and fellow Americans, or rather Americans, not fellow Americans, here who are illegals, and doing things that any other country would expel them as quickly as they possibly could as a foreign national committing crimes on their soil. So this is a big change in perception.
I do think that they are using Los Angeles as a test case. And we'll see on Saturday. There's an expectation that they're going to have an all-day protest. I think they are trying to create social unrest in the country. Here's the challenge that I think they're going to have. One, overwhelmingly the American public are saying no. Two, what's the end goal? Do you think there's anything they can do that's going to make Trump stop trying to deport people? I just don't think that Trump was susceptible because that was an election year. He was worried about what the optics were. I don't think he's worried about the optics at all because I think he believes he's 100% right.
I think it was last week I said here, the number one thing that I hear from friends of mine, not in the media, but friends of mine who voted Trump is a version of, I voted for this. I'm watching the things happen that made me vote for Trump, in my case, for the third time. You know, some of the people I know, certainly many of them, third-time Trump. It's kind of amazing. Think about third-time Trump voters. Haven't voted for a Republican who's not Trump in over a decade, at least for president. And here we are watching how the Democrats are scrambling for some kind of relevancy in opposition to him, and they're forced to do things that I think put them in an even weaker political position going forward. You know, and with these protests, it's not hard for people to see, hold on a second, you're telling us that illegal aliens are like the fabric of this nation, better than Americans, harder working than Americans, even though they broke the law to be here and all that. And then we see people on the streets by the thousands in Los Angeles and people waving Mexican flags and breaking laws and waving other, flags of other countries, particularly Latin American countries, and breaking our laws. Yeah, that's why we want illegals deported, right? I mean, this is the optics of this. What people were seeing, and you mentioned this on X, was supportive of their perception that we have a problem that needs to be solved with illegals who have developed political power in places like Los Angeles. Think about this. Illegal aliens are an important constituency of Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles and of Governor Gavin Newsom of California. People that aren't even supposed to be in the country in the first place. And that's a slap in the face. That's an outrage to Americans who do have nothing but allegiance and fealty and love for this place. And increasingly, it's all Americans, all colors, races, creeds, all people who are actually supposed to be here. More and more of them. I know there are Democrats who are still insane, but they're saying, we don't have a country if we can't determine who's here. That's pretty obvious.
No doubt. You might be taking all the steps to protect your online personal info. You might even be using two-factor authentication or change your password every month. But as much as you do to protect your info, lots of places out there have your data. They might not be as careful with it as you are. That's why you need LifeLock. LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second for identity threats. If your identity's stolen, a LifeLock U.S.-based restoration specialist will help solve identity theft issues on your behalf, guaranteed, or your money back. Plus, every LifeLock plan backed by the $1 Million Protection Package, meaning LifeLock will reimburse you up to the limits of your plan if you lose money due to identity theft. You can't control how others handle your personal information, but you can help protect it with LifeLock. Save 40% your first year with my name, Clay, as the promo code. Call 1-800-LifeLock or go to lifelock.com. Either way, use promo code Clay for 40% off. Terms apply.